Welcome to Your Next Chapter, where we feature conversations with leading audio creators and industry experts shaping the future of podcasting. I'm Jeremiah Tittle, CEO of Next Chapter Podcast, and your host for insightful conversations that delve into the creative processes, challenges, and innovations driving the world of audio storytelling. And a quick announcement, Next Chapter Podcast Accelerator is coming to the internet near you, coming to your phones, coming to YouTube. It's an exciting time here at Next Chapter Podcast. Before I get to my guest, who's completely connected to this in a way, this podcast, Your Next Chapter, began as a way to share the creative conversations happening behind the scenes here at Next Chapter. We were talking to my business partner, Michael. We were talking to some of the hosts of our shows, like Bridget Todd, who hosts Beef, for example. We interviewed her in season 1. This was a way to support others on their podcasting journey. We've heard from many podcast curious, quote unquote, folks who want to explore audio storytelling, but don't have like kind of that full scale budget of what goes into making Our New South, working with Levine Museum of the New South. We were fortunate to have the Knight Foundation support that as an example. So it's just a big 10-person team, and it takes a lot. Some people think podcasting is easy. Check out the show and tell me what you think. But it's harder than you think, I think, is what the point is. But that's why we're launching this Next Chapter Podcast Accelerator. It's a new program designed to help you launch and grow a podcast on your own terms. And the accelerator includes educational videos, step-by-step guides and workbooks, weekly Q&As with top industry experts, and production training and support. We'll also be shifting some podcast episodes to feature Q&As with members of our accelerator community. And if you're interested in learning more, go to nextchapterpodcast.com/contact, and a team member will be in touch. Now, as I said, very much connected to the accelerator program is because she's our first guinea pig, and goodness gracious, she started with a lot already going for her before we even met. I'm very fortunate to have worked with Pamela Kirkland, one of the co-hosts of Ambie Award-winning The 10 News. I've worked with her for decades now, not to make us both obviously reveal how old we are, but yeah, so the neighbor down the street just so happens to be a podcaster, an artist, I mean, multi-hyphenate and then some. So happy to have Stephanie Brown, the host of In Between Artists, a podcast devoted to helping artists rejuvenate their creative careers. Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So happy to have you. Coming to us from Georgia, from Atlanta. Can we say Atlanta?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's start off with the big question. You had been working this podcast before we even met.
I did.
And I'm just curious, what drew you to podcasting specifically?
So my husband actually was a part of my biggest draw. He's had a comic theory podcast for 3 years now, and I've seen him record and that kind of thing. I'm also a huge fan of audiobooks. So
Cool.
For me, consuming content audibly has always been a thing. It's been something that I'm interested in. I wouldn't say I was a huge podcast listener, but that was something that was growing. And I think honestly, it just connected to a lot of my future goals and aspirations that I had for myself. I think little Stephanie was seeing a future talk show host. I think little Stephanie was thinking about being a public speaker. So as I continue to consume more content audibly, I just always felt like, yeah, this is something that I could see myself doing.
That's cool. What conceptions, true or untrue, did you have about podcasting before you dove in?
I assumed it would be way too expensive to do, which was a little true and untrue. In terms of equipment and stuff, right? You want to sound good. I think with my background just in the arts and also just being a low key perfectionist, like I didn't want to just like record anything. So I did feel like there was like a barrier of entry in terms of like, what equipment do I get? Like, I don't know anything about audio equipment. I mean, I'm a photographer, so I've got that going for me, but that's still images. Things are very different when you're thinking about video. Thankfully, I
Hmm.
had my brother to help demystify a lot of that. He's a media specialist in the Chicago area, so that was helpful. I think another misconception I had, which I'm still kind of navigating, is like, can you actually make money doing podcasts? That was my biggest kind of question because, I was interested and very curious, but also realistically, I was like, can I sustain this on my own? And how can I get people interested to support? I didn't have a lot of examples of podcasts that made money outside of like the crowd-funded ones.
Yeah, that is, I think now almost 7 years after launching this company, more in the beginning, it was one of the biggest questions, like, how do you make money on podcasts?
Yeah.
Like, but this is
It's
this is
like
a real
personal
question.
radio. It's like, do people still do radio ads? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard.
It's like, I'm not famous. I don't have a million followers. So
Right.
can I really make a buck? It's a fair question. The answer is you can. It's different for every person. And, I'd say we've been recording a lot of videos together. So I feel so comfortable like doing this video recording with you right now. I feel like we're in the same living room or whatever. But the last conversation we had, we did not record, and I don't know, it might have been somewhat intentional, but essentially all we were doing was talking about sponsorship because you have a
Yeah.
lead
Trying
on
to
a
put together a
sponsor,
pitch.
and I try to offer whatever advice. I am not a salesperson. There is the argument everybody is doing some sort of sales and whatever. Field they're in potentially, and so I think there's a degree of truth in that. But in this case, it's more just like a gut thing. Like, okay, so you have a sponsor that's such a great fit for your podcast, and how do you give them value? How do you
Yeah.
structure it in a way that makes sense, maybe compared to some other deals that they've been involved in? So
Right.
it was a lot of fun to work on with you. I like that kind of strategy work. Problem solving, even if it's not a
Same.
problem, it's a good problem to
Yeah,
have.
yeah. It's nice to
um,
exercise the strategic part of my brain.
yeah, which you have a lot with your tech background, etc. Like, what can't this woman do? Uh, was there any one roadblock in getting going? Just curious if you could share anything on any of the roadblocks in terms of what you encountered in putting this podcast together.
Yeah, so there's two main roadblocks that come to mind. I so I figured out like the equipment stuff with the help of my brother. He literally made me like an Amazon shopping list. I had looked at some quotes to actually go to a studio to record my episodes in, and the cost per hour was going to be like 75, maybe
Mm,
$50 an hour was kind of like the range. And when I told my brother that, he was just like, you could buy this stuff, for a fraction of
yeah.
that cost when all the episodes add up. So I had his help there. I think the hard part was I was not going to buy a new camera. So I already had a nice camera, but the only downside is that it is still first, video second. So
Mm.
I was limited to only 25-minute runs on
Interesting. I didn't know
video.
this.
Yeah, so I've got a full frame camera, it's great quality and everything, but it is limited when it comes to video. So I could only do a max of like 25 minutes straight. So I literally had to have my husband in the background, like, all right, like giving me like a warning to be like, hey, 2 minutes, and then you're
Yeah.
up, and then we'd have to pause and then kind of like resume the recording and try to like keep it smooth. So I would say that was one part. The other thing, which ended up being a blessing in disguise because then I later met you, is that I recorded 6 episodes and I had an idea of how I wanted to put it out there. But I think I was also really overwhelmed with just figuring out distribution, the cadence, like what all the content that I would need to make just to get people to watch it or to like even know that it exists. And then towards the end of me recording, I was also like going through my first pregnancy. So I think I just totally overestimated or underestimated the amount of work that would be required to actually fully put it out there. And I didn't want to like do anything halfway. So for me personally, like with any endeavor that I'm doing, if I'm not going to be able to give it 110%, I rather just pause. So I think I released like one episode and then I was like, you know what? This isn't how I want to do it. Let me just pause. I got the content. We'll figure it out later. And now we're here. Now we're later.
We are later, and no, it's so interesting to hear, yeah, some of the steps for you and how you navigated it because you bring so much to the table, and it's nice that we feel great that we could help in any way. But I'm curious, what advice would you have for others considering launching their podcast? Besides joining our new accelerator program, Winky Face, that's from Nick, our executive producer. So you can blame him for that cheeky comment. But yeah, what advice would you give others?
I think the short answer is like, just do it. I think that one of the things that I was thinking about was, oh man, there's so many podcasts out there. I think that's like the easy thing to say. It's like starting a YouTube channel. It's like, oh my goodness, there's so many channels out there. There's so many this, there's so many that. Like, why me? No one's gonna like, I think it's easier to make excuses, right? As to the reasons why you shouldn't. And I'm glad that I did not listen to that inner critic and just did it anyway because everybody's individual story matters and everybody's going to come to it from a different perspective. So even if, there's other art entrepreneurial podcasts out there, the angle in which I'm doing it is different and there's only one me. And I might say something or present something that's different that really resonates with people. And I feel like everybody has a little something that would make that unique. So if you've got an inkling or had an idea or a dream of like doing a podcast, just do it. Don't let um, the large sea of podcasts out there discourage you because you'd be surprised as to a lot of the gaps that have yet to be filled that your podcast could be filling.
Well said. Really well done. Going to shift away from podcasting and talk about your art. I think this is.
Yeah.
Let's talk more about you. We're kind of doing this out of order, maybe, but I think for the people who are pod curious, they probably benefited from your thoughts over the last 10 minutes or so. But defining identity is the subheader from executive producer Nick Kastner on this. When did you first start using art to process and explore your identity?
Believe it or not, it goes all the way back to grade school. It's one of those things that I've been going at my art practice for 12 years and counting. And it's one of those things where you look back and you're just like, no, wow, that started actually all the way back there. One of my earliest memories was utilizing a film camera in Jamaica, um, just to keep myself busy. My dad put a camera in my hands to keep me busy. And I found myself not just randomly taking pictures, but literally building stories. And when I look back at those photographs, I was just really intentional without even knowing that I was really intentional in creating like my compositions and asking my cousins to pose in certain ways and positioning them and thinking about what I'm going to put in the frame or, keep out of the frame. For me, it started then.
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, I mean, the follow-up question had to do with kind of your experience as the daughter of Jamaican immigrants and how that kind of shaped your understanding of identity. You just brought up being in Jamaica, so that's like
Yeah,
as
it's foundational for sure. Um, so I am the last of five children.
hmm,
Both of my parents are Jamaican immigrants, and I am considered a first generation American because both of my parents are from Jamaica. And by time I was born, they had already moved to the States. So my oldest sister's actually was born there.
Oh, wow.
But by the time I came around, they were already settled in South Florida. And they really worked hard to like recreate their upbringing in Jamaica in Florida.
Hmm.
So it is foundational to my entire like fiber of my being, my Jamaican identity. So much so that I was confused growing up in terms of how to answer that question, like, where are you from? Because I knew what people were trying to get at, but also like I didn't feel American. I used to say for the longest that the only thing American about me is my birth certificate, because my entire upbringing it's just has been a reflection and a mirror of Jamaica. And I'm also really grateful that growing up, my parents consistently brought us back there. So I did feel like I always had a really close relationship in the island and with the island through my parents. And it wasn't until adulthood that I started to really explore that and unpack really the pros and cons of that. Because it is a double sided experience. I am, presenting and identify as a Black woman, and people who know that I'm American might easily assume, like, oh, you're African American, but I have never identified that way. I've always identified as a Jamaican descendant, as a first generation American. That's always been a part of the way that I've described myself and identified.
You mentioned your first pregnancy.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, in terms of your roles and identity here as an artist, an entrepreneur, a tech nerd, is that rude? I think techies are the smart, and I love it that that you can fulfill so many of these categories, but new mother as well. I'm curious
Yeah.
how these roles kind of inform each other, and how you maintain a sense of self kind of across them.
Oof, I'm still figuring out the sense of self stuff on the motherhood arm, since I feel like that is the newest title and hat that I've been wearing. My little one is about to be 11 months, which is wild. The time really does fly. Um, I think that for me, being a mom has been like the pinnacle of me being an artist, though. It is literally creation. So for
Wow.
anyone who's ever made any piece of art, it's just like it's monumental, like that feeling of just seeing him, knowing that he exists, and knowing that like he literally came from me, not just in thought and manifestation, but like in the flesh. And that to me is has been like it's definitely its own pillar in my life and in my like artistic career and trajectory. And I think just being an artist just makes that feel even more powerful and strong. I think where I am right now in my practice, I'm really grateful because I've come full circle in understanding all the different aspects of my identity, and who I am and how I come to the table. I use both sides of my brain, and not everybody does that. So I am a strategic thinker. I have a background in business operations and project management. I'm an educator. I love to teach. I love to speak. And I'm also a creative through and through. And for most of my practice, I really treated all of those things separately. But now, I guess it took like 12 plus years, but now I have finally understood my art practice to be as expansive as it is, because I show up as an artist no matter all of the hats that I'm wearing. So whether I'm doing business ops for a tech company, if I'm doing community advocacy work, if I'm in my own art studio, or if I'm hosting a podcast, I'm showing up as a creative and I'm utilizing my creative mind. And for me, that manifests through writing, through photography, through sculpture, through spoken word. Like the medium doesn't matter anymore, which is why I identify as an interdisciplinary artist, because it's more so the intersections of all of these different ways that like I move and shift through spaces.
I ask you about advice for podcasters. Now I'll ask you about advice for artists who maybe are
Mm.
struggling to define or embrace their identity in their creative practice. I'm curious what you might say to them.
I think the most valuable thing that I could share with an artist is actually to pose a question that I wish someone asked me, and one that I continue to try to ask more artists is, who's your art for? And do you want to monetize it? I think we as an artist need permission to make a choice. And I don't think many artists have ever been asked that, with the assumptions and stigmas around like starving artists and, like art degrees don't make money and things like that. Um, your art doesn't have to be for the public. It could just be for you. It could just be for your friends and family. You don't have to necessarily monetize. But I do feel like once you can address those questions, like who is your art for and do you want to monetize it? I think once you have the answers to those questions, it really unlocks your next steps and how you might want to move and shake in the art world. Just kind of giving yourself permission to exist on your terms, I think is really key. And that's something that I wish for all artists and creatives. I think it'll really help us like just get out of our blocks and our own like self-sabotaging ways is just to kind of ask those questions and think about what do we want at the end of the day? Because we've got the ability to craft whatever world and reality we want for ourselves.
Beautiful. Oh, love that advice as an artist and podcaster, where we have a lot in common, but sometimes you need to hear that. Yeah. I needed to hear that today. So I really appreciate that. As I look to get out of my own, not writer's block, but artist block, as it comes and goes. So thank you. Last question, ask all my guests on your next chapter. What's your next chapter?
I love that that's the name of your company. What's my next chapter? The first thing that comes to mind for me is my next chapter looks like financial and artistic freedom.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I think after, over a decade in doing what I'm doing, I'm looking to move into a space where I'm prioritizing me and my art practice. And no more hiding behind other people's projects and works, and really centering who I am and claiming what is mine and what's ahead. So that's what's ahead for me. That's my next chapter.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining this show. Thank you so much for becoming the first ever ambassador for the Next Chapter Accelerator program. Stephanie, it's been lovely to work with you on your podcast, and it's only just beginning in terms of the season kind of rolling out. So I hope people will check it out, whether you're really into art or not. I think the people you talk to in this kind of informal setting is just, it's really lovely. I think a lot of people could learn a lot from you. So please do check out The In-Between Artist by Stephanie Brown. And if you're interested in joining the Next Chapter Accelerator program alongside Stephanie, please go to nextchapterpodcast.com/contact. And we will be sure to get back to you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Your Next Chapter. I'm your host, JT. Our executive producer is Nick Kastner. This is edited by Justin Cortese, and we drop episodes bi-weekly. Please follow the show, and thanks for listening.